Everything's going to be great, and he may join us later in the meeting. If not, we'll just continue. I do believe we have a quorum. So with that, Maddie, I'd like to call to order the meeting. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Kerr.
Here.
Councilmember Parmet.
Hi.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
Councilmember Thisted.
Present.
There are 5 members present.
Okay, thank you. We're opening up the work session agenda today, and the first thing is a discussion of our priorities for 24. A lot of people have been asking about what is going on for the next 6-7 months, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Crowe.
Okay, so this will mostly be kind of a summary of what staff is doing, and we're looking for something we might have missed that council feels is very important, but it's also kind of just updating you on where we're at. So I'll just kind of go through some of the issues we're working on, explain what's happening, interrupt with any questions at any time, please. So over the next couple months before the end of the year, we'll be finishing up our implementation of short-term rental licensing. It's just started. Maddie is very much on top of this, but with any new technology or a new town, we can expect hiccups to be occurring, and getting these licenses issued and out is going to be taking a big hunk of Maddie's time over the next couple months, surely. We're also looking into updating our webpage, possibly going with an entirely different system so that we can have better agenda building capabilities and dispersals directly out of the website, rather than Maddie having to put together these long PDFs every Friday afternoon. Along with the webpage, we're working with our IT to look into putting in our own IT system rather than sharing with the rest of the building. As a town government, we're concerned we have people's records, privacy, safety concerns. There are different rules for us than there are for private companies. So we anticipate we'll be putting in our own IT system, own wireless system within the building too. My big project over the next several months will be working on our 2025 budget. We'll be having several workshops on that, and soliciting your input on that as we work it out a little bit better. Sorry. We're going to begin. We're going to begin codification of some of the ordinances we passed. Oh, and here comes our mayor. We'll hold off for just a little bit.
We'll let our mayor join us. Well, you go ahead and continue.
Okay. Codification of the development code and any other ordinances we have to pass by the beginning of next year, including ordinances like the nuisance code, the model traffic code. We could very easily be bringing a public safety, just general overall public safety code. That ordinance will depend a lot on who we choose as our next list on the item, law enforcement agreement. We're still in deep discussions with the town of Dillon. Sheriff's Department has been working out fairly well, but we're waiting for budget from Dillon to see how we move forward on that. And we'll have discussions on how the council wants us to advance. We've got a lot of IGAs to finish up. We'll be doing the Housing Authority tonight, but we've still got the Transit Authority, Early Childhood Options, the Summit County Telecommunications Committee. They are currently actually negotiating for a new franchise agreement for all the towns, including Keystone. So we have all those IGAs to finalize and formalize by the end of the year. We have a Public Works Director coming on by the end of the month, and the first thing he'll be doing is getting engineering consulting firm in to do a complete road survey for us. Two parts to that road survey. First is identifying the conditions of the roads, and well, actually first is identifying who the heck has responsibility for all the roads in the town. We'll be working closely with Lindsay and going over a lot of plats to get that done, and then identifying the conditions and prioritizing repair or rebuild and levels of repair and rebuild for the various roads. Along with that, once we get that survey, we really want to get an RFP for actual road construction and repairs next year. We want to get it out before the end of the year, as road construction companies are finalizing their schedule for 2025. We want to make sure we can get in on their building, get our projects in. We'll begin the comprehensive plan by the end of the year. A lot of that actually depends on what happens with the grant request we turned in. We can't technically enter into a contract with a consultant until we've entered into a contract with DOLA for grant money. So
Will they throw off your momentum if I ask?
Nope.
So could you let us, when we think we will hear from the Department of Local Affairs?
We expect to hear from them in November with a decision on it, and then it's a matter of just getting the contract with DOLA completed as quickly as possible. It shouldn't take that long. These are standard form contracts that DOLA use all the time. But my anticipation is in December we'll sign a contract with DOLA and sign a contract with the consultant. The consultant will hopefully get going right away. We'll be in discussions. Consultants are used to this. Land use consultants, they've dealt with these grants, so we'll be in discussion getting things lined up so that they can hit the ground running on signing of a contract with them. We'll be
John, one question. The DOLA grant, it sounds like that's the normal large grant cycle with the November. I thought we were applying for the smaller amount would get us a quicker turnaround.
It's the tier 2 grants, or the higher level grants, will actually have their public hearings in October and November.
Right, but
And
we
they
were
get
going,
awarded in December.
but we were, all right, so we're going for tier 1.
Yeah, we're going for tier 1, which is awarded a month to a month and a half
All right.
before the tier 2 stuff.
All right.
So we'll get the comprehensive plan going as soon as possible, depending on the DOLA situation. I really anticipate we will be getting the full amount of the DOLA grant. They tend to support comprehensive plans, especially for towns that don't have them because we just started. Lindsay, our community development department, when the planner starts, is going to spend some real time diving down into the Vail Resorts housing report, making sure that everything they're claiming is in accordance with our PUD and all the housing agreements that we have. And see now, that'll be the start of, that'll then roll into the housing needs analysis that'll be part of the comprehensive plan. We're going to be trying to identify grant opportunities for anticipated projects in the next year so that we're ready to roll at the next grant cycle. There are CDOT grants, federal grants, and DOLA grants for all sorts of projects we need in the town, including rec path repair and reconstruction in areas that's kind of been a priority of our community development department lately, since he and our clerk have had their biking competition and are on the paths often. We're working with CDOT on all sorts of things. Actually, I just even had discussions today about the intersection at West Keystone Road and Tennis Townhomes. They're coming out and filling potholes, which are lasting about a week. And we need some bigger solutions right now for that area. We'll also be arranging for the CDOT traffic studies, which will inform all the rest of the development along Highway 6 in the future, making sure we're getting those traffic studies done at the correct time of year. Still negotiating for the purchase of this building with the Keystone Center. A few things not on the list. We'll be working on committees and commissions, determining what citizen advisory committees and commissions we need as a committee to look at the SDR processes and ordinances. I think that's an important one as we turn around and make sure what we're doing is we're doing it right. Just a general citizens advisory group, a business advisory group, and then we'll have some other committees that will be set up, or at least kind of start as part of the comprehensive, like trails and open space, issues like that, and any other ones that the board determines we should go for. See what else. Oh, we need to get a whole bunch of contracts in place by the end of the year for road plowing, police, law enforcement, road maintenance, finding an auditor, contracting with an auditor, and any other things that kind of pop up as we move forward. We have the town council vacancy that we'll be dealing with starting tonight. We have our election coming up. Can't forget about that, which we'll also be discussing tonight and having our town meeting next week on the 20th at 6 o'clock right here. And then all the day-to-day operations will continue here. So staff has a pretty full plate coming to the end of the year, but is there something I've missed?
Is there an opportunity? I really appreciate that so many of these bullet points relate to our infrastructure and traffic. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity before the beginning of the ski season to have conversations with Vail Resorts about certain traffic and parking concerns. I've heard from employees that they touted it as an overwhelming success last year. I think some of us who live at ground zero, where the resort is, would beg to differ. And it would be really nice if we could maybe start to talk about some of the challenges that existed last year, see if there are some adjustments that could potentially be made this year. At least get that on the agenda, that the talking points for the monthly conversations with them, so it becomes a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, that we could absolutely do that, and it seems that our conversations are becoming much more, they tend to be more weekly now, and if we get a new general manager in within the month, which I expect could happen. We'll get those conversations rolling with the new GM right away too. I'll also bring them up next week when I'm talking to their interim. So that can be done.
And it may be worthwhile to also ask the resort GM or Tom Fortune, if he's still here, to come in and give us an update on the parking plan for the year.
Okay.
Just so we're all aware of what's going on
Yeah.
And traffic flow.
and traffic flow for that, yeah.
One other question along those same lines. And I know this might take some extra manpower, but is it possible to have a place on our existing website for updates about current projects in Keystone? So if people are, maybe they wouldn't burn up the phone lines. I don't know if people are interested, but I am. Like the activity that's going on along Highway 6 that seems to be within Keystone town limits, to have just an update on the homepage of this is what traffic update or construction update, so people
I
have a
think
quick reference.
Yeah, I don't think there would be too much of a problem. We're not going to be giving traffic reports,
No,
but Yeah,
like
but-
this is what
yeah.
construction is due to, or
Yeah.
expect construction for the utility liner,
Yep.
whatever's going on, or what's going on in Loveland Pass Village.
okay.
Councilmember Sullivan.
You have an awful lot going on, which is great. All the things we need to get going. But when you look at those things like the contract for police, knowing what roads first we should be responsible for plowing, and then the contracts to get that done. Are there any of these that, with all those things going on, that you worry about that we're going to miss deadlines? I know that the county sheriff is anxious to have us make a decision about our police. Are any deadline issues that you see?
No, other than, we all kind of wake up every morning feeling like everything is due 5 minutes ago. But we're handling it. We have a really good staff here. And bringing the 2 additional staff on in the next couple of weeks is going to really ease my state of mind on these deadlines as they're approaching the end of the year.
Councilmember Kirk.
Thank you. So I laughed when Councilmember Sullivan opened with a long list, and it is a long list, and I appreciate it. We spent so much time in the first 6 months of this town just establishing everything, so it's exciting to start moving forward. I'm not going to add anything, but I think it might be worthwhile to prioritize and to talk about priorities, and maybe my council member colleagues can weigh in, but I think priority 1, 2, and 3 is safety, safety, safety. So the first one would be the law enforcement agreement. The second would be anything we can do on US 6. Any ready now projects or easily done projects like the speed camera, the speed signs, the town signs, road markings. I know these are on your agenda, but they're pretty hot priorities. Then the third would be driver safety. So you've already identified both road maintenance and plowing. So thank heavens for the new Director of Public Works. Number 4 would be to transition and monitor that STR program. We're putting a lot of effort into it. Our town clerk has worked far more than she ever anticipated, I would guess, on this program, and it's really essential that we get it right. Even though we know that everything will not be what we expect and we'll learn from it, but we want to be positioned so that we can learn from it. And the 5th one would be community engagement, which is why I was very pleased when you added to this list how important it is to get some of these boards and commissions going even before we start the comprehensive plan. And we'll talk more about that. But thank you for asking us for the input. Does anybody want to talk different priorities?
Councilmember Parmet.
I agree with some of those priorities, and building off of one of them, in fact, would be relating to Highway 6. I think we talked about trying to get signage up around engine braking. I don't know where that needs to make its juncture with the nuisance ordinances and the model traffic code. but I know that those are like some joint working points between town staff and council. And similarly, it's something we've been talking about for many months at this point, is dark sky. And the reason for why that needs to be a priority is if we don't get that in place quickly, then you end up having new development projects approved and put in place that aren't going to follow that, and then you end up with more light pollution in the development process. Whereas it's not a terribly difficult thing to get that interaction with the dark sky folks, so that we can again have that juncture between staff and council.
Other comments? I think as you laid out your priorities, I agree with the comments on public safety has got to be our lining up and getting that as one of our top priorities. Also, I'm concerned about the being able to be positioned with the new roads and bridges public works director to be able to lay out and identify those roads that need to be maintained, because it's not just what's in the plats now, but there's going to have to be agreements made with HOAs or the owners of a particular road that to be consistent across the community, that the town would pick up maintenance for. And so that's going to necessitate a plat change. I can see significant amount of work for public works in that area coming up in the next 2 months as you go forward. I'm not as worried about maintenance of those particular roads because they're all maintained by Vail Resorts today, and we'll have a contract in place for that. I am very concerned about Loveland Pass Village. We don't have, the county does not want to maintain that road for us, which then means we're going to have to get a contractor to do it. It's different type of, with a gravel road, significantly different than any of the other roads that Vail maintains, and I would envision that Vail probably wouldn't be interested in maintaining that particular road. Mazuma Road's another road where we picked up responsibility for, that I think we could probably negotiate with the county to maintain that, in a quid pro quo potentially with East and West Keystone roads, which there's portions of those that are county responsibilities that we could do a swap with them. But the public works, I think, is going to be very busy just doing that amount of work in the next couple of months. Law enforcement's a major concern as we go forward. I think you've made good progress on that, but that's going to be a lot of staff work in that area as well in coming months. And of course, we know the clerk staff is completely overstaffed and plenty of time to do anything additional tasking. But no, the amount of that they're accomplishing right now is something phenomenal. Doesn't adequately describe it for what they're doing. And accomplishing the short-term rental transition. I am concerned in the transition that we also put in place an enforcement capability, and the code enforcement function comes to the fore that probably ought to be up there somewhere. Certainly, we probably don't need it really until the end of the year as we enter into the ski season, but something that I think the staff is going to need to evaluate. You need additional staff. You're going to probably need additional staff to do that, or have that done by law enforcement or something. But that's, I think, at least on my plate, a fairly high priority as well. To follow through with the promises of we're going to do short-term rentals, but we're also going to do them right and protect the community. Other comments? Do you have what you need, Mr. Town Manager?
I believe I do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the budget process.
Okay, this is just kind of informative for you. Some of these, well, I'm in budget season right now. I spend a good hunk of my day going over our budget and figuring out what we need to do for fiscal year 2025. There are certain dates that are set in stone, that we have to meet. So I'll just go over our timeline as we move forward. I don't even know why I put August 25th there, but it's traditionally the start of it's the ball drop for municipal budgets. It's when the county assessors certify assessed and actual values to the town. We don't have a property tax, so that one really doesn't matter to us whatsoever. But it is, like I said, the traditional ball drop for municipalities. The first real deadline we have is October 15th. And that's state statute and in our charter. That's when a proposed budget must be submitted to the town council. Now, this is not the final budget. This is first draft of the budget. We have a meeting scheduled October 8th, and I anticipate we'll present the proposed budget at that time. No action has to be taken by the council at that time. After the budget is submitted, we do have to have a public hearing for the general citizenry to give you their thoughts and ideas about the budget, and we'll also have several workshops. We'll go over the budget kind of with fine-tooth comb with you guys and work out our final iteration of the budget, which must be adopted on or before December 15th. We have 2 meetings in December. First is on the 9th. Second is on the 23rd. I do not anticipate we will be having a meeting.
Correction,
10th
10th and 24th.
10th and 24th. Oh, sorry about that. Must have looked at 2023 or 2025. I don't anticipate we will be having a meeting on Christmas Eve. So we'll have to adopt the meeting, or adopt the budget, and all the resolutions designating the fund distributions, things like that. They're pretty much standard form for all budgets on the 9th. If there's some problem with that, we will have to have a special meeting before the 15th to officially adopt the budget. We submit a certified copy of the budget on January 31st, and we have to, once again, in both our state statute and the charter, have an audit completed by June 30th of next year for this year's operations, 2024 operations. The budget and our town charter lays out the requirements for the budget. It's our estimate of our anticipated revenue from all sources for the ensuing year. This one changes due to tax, how much people come and spend up here. And it can also change based on the number of grants we apply for, get things like that. Estimate of the general fund cash surplus at the end of the current year. We will not have a deficit, so we don't have to worry about how to make up a deficit. Big ones are estimate of the expenditures for the operations. That's basically what the budget is, and that's the main point of the budget. Debt service requirements, we don't have any debt service, do not anticipate debt service occurring this year for the fiscal year 2025 budget. Estimated the sum required to be raised by any tax levy. We do not have any tax levy other than our sales tax and possibly our lodging tax, depending on the November election. And the balance broken down, it'll be broken down into our various funds. And anticipating any deficit, which I don't in next year's budget. I anticipate next year's budget will have a significant surplus at the end of the year, building up a decent fund for rainy days and major projects. And that's what we're going to be going through over the next couple of years, our next couple of months as we work on the fiscal year 2025 budget. Any questions from the council? I know you all kind of did this before already.
Councilmember Kerr.
Yes, we did, going into this whole town situation. So I'm just going to insert this November election. We're currently thinking about asking ballot questions about debrucing, to the attorney figure out how to say that, and about a 2% lodging tax. What are the implications for your budget? Are you essentially building two different budgets? How?
So the debrucing will not have an impact on next year's budget because, as our attorney said, we don't have we still won't have a Tabor baseline in 2025. The 2% lodging tax, we're kind of building a dual budget.
Okay, and
Yeah.
more work but wise. Thank you.
And am I correct that the 2% lodging tax, if it were to be dedicated to infrastructure, public safety, would predominantly be in the capital fund? So as a result, what it could impact is capital projects that would we could potentially look at accomplishing next year if we try to accelerate some of the capital work.
Yeah, that's my thought. The public safety aspect of that, we need to budget for regardless of how the 2% tax passes. And, we can just have a large surplus in the capital fund, which we can easily spend next year.
And you will have, I believe, from election day to December 15th, 5 to 6 weeks to take a look and tweak if there are other projects that we think we can accomplish next year if it were to pass.
Yeah, we should know, technically we won't know officially until end of December, beginning of January, after all the UCOVA vote deadlines. It depends on how close the election is, but my anticipation is we'll know right away how these ballot questions are doing, and we can throw some projects in there, possibly by the December 15th budget.
Councilmember Davis.
You mentioned UCOVA votes. We have very few in the first 3 elections, just FYI.
Yeah, and usually there are very few, but if it's a vote or two, yeah, which I don't anticipate given polling results we've been getting.
Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you. And next topic is discussion of ballot questions and survey results. And again, Mr. Town Manager.
And I will let our town attorney, Jennifer Madsen, start this discussion, then I'll talk about the survey results afterwards.
Good afternoon. So in the work session packet, there is the staff report with the revisions to both the ballot questions for the debrucing question and then also for the lodging tax question. The revisions were based on the discussion of the last work session on July 23rd. So I'm thinking you all had an opportunity to review it and welcome any comments or thoughts on changes.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Nothing substantive. I thought it was pretty well done and reflective of what we said last time. Just under the lodging tax question, a couple of different typos, ands. Under the capital infrastructure project, it says and, public safety and then and in the next one. It's just a nit.
Which and would you admit?
Right at the public safety,
Safety and maintenance?
under the dots, where it's bullet under the lodging tax question, it says public safety and.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a nit. I just
Okay.
didn't want- If we were copying that exactly.
No, that's good. I see it, definitely. I'm gonna actually delete the and before any. That's the and that I'm gonna delete. Okay, thank you.
Any comments, questions? And again, back to the town manager.
Okay, I'll talk about our survey results. We're actually up to 301 responses now. 178, I believe, came from registered voters. And I'm really impressed with the way the community has stepped up and weighed in on this. It's impressive. I'll start with debrucing. And actually, just before I came in here, I broke these out into registered voter, non-registered voters. And among registered voters, well, debrucing is now the generic question at about 55% approval. If you sort that out into just registered voters, it's right around 58% approval. And both times approximately 38-39% disapproval, about 12%, maybe a little more, well, more now, among registered voters, unknown, undecided. The debrucing support went up in both samples when it was mentioned that this would allow the town to apply for and receive grants from other government or private grants. Support went up a good 4 or 5 points on both things. Support went up when people were informed that almost all the municipalities in Colorado have debruced. It kind of reassures them that this is not the town trying to pull a fast one, get around something here. This is just really standard operating procedure for governments in Colorado underneath Tabor. And I think whoever takes the lead in as supporters for these issues should really, and it can't be the board once we make the official decision to move forward. They should stress this to us. It allows us to get extra money and keep it, and it's standard operating procedure.
One question. Can board members, not functioning as board members, but as citizens, take an active role in either supporting or opposing the ballot measure?
I will pass that question right off to our attorney.
Absolutely, yeah, you definitely can. The issue with the board doing it is the Fair Campaign Practices Act, which prohibits town money being spent to advocate for or against a ballot measure. As individual citizens, you have First Amendment rights, and those First Amendment rights include campaigning on issues that you have an interest in.
So in other words, a board member or board members could submit suggested language for the pro or con associated with the ballot measure.
You can. I would recommend that if you're publicly speaking, writing articles or anything like that, that you say at the start that you're speaking as a private citizen, not on behalf of the town of Keystone. You can put your title in there that you have a role on town council, but that the position statement is from your role as an individual.
Councilmember Davis.
It seems fairly clear that we need to do a lot of education on what debrucing is. I did send the KOA survey to the 144 owners at the Pines and got an email back from one of my owners who's an international CPA going, can you explain this to me one more time? So I think we need to break it down and clarify it and focus on the reasons as you have been showing from the survey. So, but I think that's something, it's a little confusing to people.
I'll work on with our attorney on a elevator speech explaining
Perfect.
debrucing.
Yeah, you know, and I understand why members of the community are confused. If someone is a Colorado resident, they have a higher probability of understanding. I believe Colorado is the only state that has this issue with the taxpayer bill of rights and the book debrucing measure to allow towns to keep all the revenue that are generated. So I can understand why many out-of-staters, it's a total foreign concept to them. Councilmember listed.
That point probably needs to be emphasized in our top 5 points, that this is unique to Colorado. Maybe to just lift the veil of mystery off of it when people are asking what the heck.
Councilmember Permit.
It is confusing, and I've often appreciated the news coverage of our sessions, but the article that covered this particular topic, I feel like did not quite make that issue clear. So yeah, we have ground to educate. That being said, I'm ecstatic about the poll results. Without any further effort, we had almost our entire average number of registered voters respond in the survey with a massive margin already. So we should educate because we want all of our constituents to understand what this is, but it's clear that there's massive support already.
Councilmember Kerr.
So I guess we've all agreed. It's confusing. It's hard to be in Colorado for any period of time and not know about Tabor, but debrucing is a foreign concept to many of us. So to that end, as we were looking at the 20 August, right? Town hall we're planning, do I have that date right?
Yes.
So that is what we need to do. All those undecideds and I'm not sure's, they are probably people who are thinking, I don't understand what I'm voting for or against. So with that in mind, what is our plan for the town hall? Who will make the presentations? And then we will receive the feedback from the community members, right? Is that not how we intend to do this?
The council, and I believe the town manager is going to discuss that under other business, but we could address it now. The town manager was going to lay out to the council. The council needs to decide who we want to have do the presentation. This is a political issue. It isn't an operational issue. So the council's the one, someone from the council needs to make the presentation, and we need to discuss how we want to conduct that town hall to provide the information. So that's going to be up to us, and we can either discuss that now or discuss it under other business. Any brothers from anyone? Should we just go through it right now?
Yeah, I think this is.
And I'll add clear outlines and information for whoever's presenting to try to explain data and debrucing.
Yeah, I would think that a presentation covering this subject along the lines of what Councilmember Sullivan put together for the incorporation, last incorporation town hall, probably would be beneficial. I don't know what the rest of you think.
The only thing I would add was that it's really two pieces, right? We have this
Yeah.
Brucing and, so it could be two different,
Different council members.
and two different people.
Yeah. Councilmember Davis.
I think it might be good to hear more than one voice that night. And I think all council members need to be prepared to answer questions.
So I just want to clarify. Even though we're not allowed to take a specific position on this, we're allowed to present the basic facts at the town hall, or would that be?
We have
better?
not made a decision yet, therefore all discussion in the town hall is all free game.
Okay.
The minute we pass an ordinance to put the issue on the ballot, that's when the restrictions fall.
Okay, so we were theoretically planning on having council members speak versus
Absolutely.
having. Okay,
Because it's really a political issue.
If I could put it another way, we're thinking about this, right? We have seen some upsides to these ideas. We want to get the feedback from the citizenry to see what do we not see, or what else should we be considering. So what we're doing is proposing, this is what we're thinking about. What do you think? Kind of a conversation, which I think is very exciting.
Have we selected a date and time? for the
20th.
town hall?
Next week at 6 p.m. We did that, what, a month ago or?
No, 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks
I
ago.
just hadn't gotten that onto my calendar. I would be happy to present.
It'd be great.
Good. Which one would you like to do?
Any and all.
I agree. I think it was Councilmember Davis that said it would be best to get multiple council members up. And so perhaps you could do one of the topics and we'd look for a volunteer to do another one of the topics.
I'm happy to help provide background information. I've already done a lot of research on it. I am taking my daughter to college, so I will not be prepared to present on the 20th, but I'm happy to do any background gathering and support services preparing presentations.
Thank you.
I don't understand your priorities, taking your, as higher priority than,
Next year, council.
Councilmember Davis.
I would like to suggest that Councilmember Sullivan was very articulate when we were doing the incorporation. And I would love to see you present. I'll stand right behind you.
I was just, not be happy to, I was just mentioning that maybe we, like ESPN, have a presenter and then somebody that's a color commentary for each one, so my fellow council member here will take on one of the two.
So we'll partner on one of those ballot questions, and maybe what Aaron and, Councilmember Parmet and Councilmember Davis considering, consider
Work
doing the
session,
same
we
for the
can use
other.
first names.
Okay.
Will we all have an opportunity to review the proposed presentations to make sure that there's?
Yeah, would is it fair to request draft presentations? I hesitate to ask for Friday, like a normal council, but perhaps Friday or Saturday, so you can get comments from the rest of the council members. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
And I'll get something out to everyone tomorrow, the two issues.
All right. And now the question is debrucing or lodging tax?
I'll do the lodging tax unless you.
You gotta jump in fast.
I guess it could be faster. I'd be happy to help out on the debrucing and we'll use Valerie's.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Yeah. Councilmember Davis.
I'm happy to work with Aaron on the lodging tax.
And
Okay, so once we have the presentation, that's essential for education, but we definitely, we're going to be there to give that feedback. So who will MC that, will we ask?
I think
You to do that?
I would probably MC it.
Good.
As the mayor, and which is why I didn't volunteer for any of the presentations. I would recommend, again, using a format very similar to what was used in the incorporation process, that the two presentations be lead-off presentations, and then we open up the podium for questions and from the audience and comments from the members who are attending the town hall. And then we'd be prepared to answer those questions. And it wouldn't be a single person answering those questions. It would be, we would open it up and allow any council member to answer questions. Does that make sense to you guys?
Panel discussion.
Yeah. Is that okay to you guys?
Okay, let me I'll continue and talk about our survey results for lodging tax here. Lodging tax, and it's really kind of funny that a tax question is polling so much better than a can we just keep the money we raised question, but that's the confusion of debrucing. But the lodging tax is polling very strongly again across all demographics. Among registered voters, the generic question is now at 74% support, and about half of those voters have short-term rentals. So there's, even decent support among short-term rental owners for it. All the added questions just increase the support. When people are informed of the other towns' tax rates, support for our 2% tax rate very much went up. When people are informed that we had the tax before, it's really just a continuation of what we used to have. Support went up. The only time support went down, and although the latest numbers today still show it above 50%, it wasn't that way in February, is the proposal that the money be used for things other than public safety and capital improvements. So those are pretty key components to this ballot question, I feel. But I'm very impressed with the support that the polling numbers have shown for the lodging tax question.
Other comments or thoughts? Thank you.
And we'll get it on the website, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, the next item is a discussion of an ordinance on formation of boards and committees. And again, I'll turn it over to the town manager.
And I will turn this one over to our town attorney.
Good afternoon. So the town council has the authority to establish different boards and commissions. Really, the purpose of establishing those boards and commissions are to help with the town government, the work of the town government. The boards and commissions can serve in the function of an advisory board. So you can form the boards and commissions to help town council do some of the work in terms of studying different issues that you would like to see studied on a greater level. And what the purpose is of this work session item is to really talk about developing a process for standing up those boards and commissions. So how would the boards and commissions be formed? And then also looking at if there are any specifics that you would like to address in terms of memberships, numbers of boards, If there are particular boards that you already want to consider, then we can talk about those particular boards. But what I'm looking at is the product of this discussion would be drafting an ordinance for you to lay out this process so that the process is consistent for establishing the boards, and so that there is an understanding of who can be members, what the terms are, those types of things. I have provided with this work session some other samples of boards and commissions ordinances for you to consider, and then also outlined different topics to address in those ordinance.
Councilmember Sullivan.
When I was going through reading all the different cities, and then I was thinking about how we apply that, I was thinking about there'd be some committees that might be in existence for 6 months, like with the post office, whereas others, will be ongoing. How do you, and so I was thinking about term limits, about all the kind of things that are on those. How do you make it flexible enough that you can do that?
Well, you would probably have standing boards and commissions. So that would be one example that we already have in place is our Planning and Zoning Commission. There might be other boards and commissions that you want to see long-term. It's anticipated that these commissions, boards would be around for a long time, such as maybe an open space and parks board. Then you might have some shorter term boards, and in your ordinance you can talk about how those two different types of boards are established. So you can either establish the long-term boards through an ordinance, which is what I think you would see with, for example, the Centennial Boards and Commission has established certain boards through that ordinance. The Silverthorne one also has established a board through the ordinance. And then your ordinance would say, well, and if the town council wants to establish a committee, an ad hoc committee, this is how it would do it. And that would be probably through a resolution. So for your zip code, the postal work, that would be through a resolution. And essentially the resolution would give direction to the committee as to what we want the committee to look at, and how long we expect the committee to be formed, how many members are on the committee, that type of thing. We can also say in the ordinance to give the town council the authority by motion to informally set up committees, ad hoc committees.
Councilmember Sullivan.
And what I'm trying to be is flexible enough, because I think we'll have a lot of different things over the next couple of years. Some short term that we need input, but they dissipate. And so I also don't want to burden them with, well, you've got to have Robert's rules, and you've got to do this, and you've got to have a committee that agrees to be a member. So, and there might be some that we want to have just residents versus others might want. So I don't want in the overall, my desire would be in the overall wording that we tie them down. We need some flexibility, is my only comment.
In other words, in my hearing, I'm going to try to interpret this. A general ordinance that would cover both short-term and long-term, but leave it up to the ordinances that establishes that particular committee, or the resolution that establishes it, would then go into the details of term, if you have term limits or those sort of things.
Right.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. No, that's definitely acceptable and a reasonable approach, and consistent with the way that other communities do it. I mean, you wouldn't want to have to form a commission that's going to study an issue for 6 months and have to do it by an ordinance that takes 2 readings and 30 days to be effective. That's just not efficient.
One example of that would probably be short-term rentals. The task force committee would have short-term. We fall into that category versus a business advisory council or citizens advisory council, maybe something more longer term. Councilmember Pfister, you had something?
I want to reinforce what Dan stated. I think the purpose, the membership, and the duration are very distinct between different boards and committees. And we, for instance, we may have some in mind that we think are a really great idea, but they might end up fizzling out. And I would hate to put those specific ones in an ordinance when they might be unorthodox in relation to what other communities are doing. There are some that are very standard, like you mentioned, the planning and zoning, the trails and open space. But I would object to putting something in stone about a committee that sounds like a good idea in an ordinance that would be hard to dissolve or handle long-term.
Councilmember Kirk.
I think those are interesting points and important. It makes me wonder, is there such a thing as a kind of a general purpose citizens advisory board that can take on different issues over time?
I haven't worked with a community that has a citizens advisory board. I mean, most of the communities that I work have very specific subject matter boards and commissions that are tasked with a particular subject matter.
Councilmember Davis.
I want to reiterate, I don't want to start any boards that don't have a really concrete goal and direction. Something nebulous out there, as Councilmember Thusted mentioned, will fizzle. And so I think they need to have very concrete job.
The charter needs to be very clear and concise and not necessarily open-ended, I believe. Councilmember Parmet.
I just concur with Valerie, Gretchen, and Ken.
Other thoughts? We've been very nebulous in general.
So are there any longer term boards and commissions that you see that you would like to see included in an ordinance?
Councilmember Davis.
I'm seeing and hearing a lot of interest in a board or commission that deals with trails, and maybe it's trails and open space. I think that's a very important area. I mean, I have people that are ready to volunteer all the time, and I think that's really key. And I can see them having very concrete goals and direction. So that's one that I think would be very important.
My question would be, would we want to put that in the establishing ordinance or address that as an individual item so that if, and trails and open space, I can't imagine this happening, but if it did fizzle, it's a very easy thing then just to kill that particular ordinance and or resolution as it's established. Yeah.
So can I just make two comments? One is you might want to have the town manager weigh in on staff time and supporting any of the boards and commissions that you're considering. And then the other thing is, here's the difference between an ordinance and a resolution. One day, you're going to have all of your ordinances codified. So they're going to be on the internet, in Municode, and everybody is going to be able to see them very easily. And whoever is working with your, town staff, your town attorney can find things so easily in your ordinances. Resolutions are different. You might not know that there is that resolution in place. Once you get 10 years down the line, who knows, who remembers that your Trails Commission was formed by resolution? And where is that resolution and what does it say? So that's something to think about.
But if we specify that in the ordinance, that information on specific boards and committees should be referenced through the resolutions, does that give people a better map for identifying that information? I just really hesitate, and we're kind of all tap dancing around it. I know there are certain boards and commissions that people have suggested since the beginning of incorporation, but I would hesitate to set a precedent for boards and commissions in the main ordinance that would set a precedent for all of our future boards and commissions and tirings, and cause a big pain in the headache for future people who serve on town council.
I guess the question is, could the general ordinance be basically truly general and talk about long-term versus the short-term task? Long-term would require a separate ordinance to establish. Short-term could be by resolution, as you discussed, and then leave it up to a separate action, ordinance action, to establish the individual committees. Councilmember Permet.
I'm not at all opposed to what you just suggested, and I fully favor the flexibility. I'll just echoing Gretchen, open space and trails is something that can't ever fizzle out for us. Why? Because we have multi-use paths. I'll discuss later what I learned I attended on the county open space meeting. We have open space, and I can only foresee us hopefully getting more open space in the future. So that would never be something that would go away. But that being said, I'm not hung up on putting that in the establishing versus, as you suggested, having a general thing and then we create an ordinance for those standing groups.
Councilmember Kerr.
I agree with what you've said. And I think open space and trails are intrinsic to the character of this town. So it would be hard to imagine, could be changing people, but no lack of interest. But to that end, if we were going to be open about what kinds of councils and boards, et cetera, we would establish, are you proposing that this umbrella ordinance include guidance for the membership in councils and boards we haven't decided on?
I mean, it really could go a lot of different ways. There's no one way that this type of overarching ordinance needs to be written in terms of speaking to these different issues. The goal would be just to give council some direction and create some consistency for setting up these boards and commissions. That would be the goal of an overarching ordinance, is that it creates a policy for setting up your boards and commissions.
So we could set up, now I'll pick the long-term of commissions in trails and open space. It could set up, if we wanted to have on that, it could set up the fact that you would establish a long-term, you'd have long-term commissions, and these are the things that would be in the ordinance, which would include membership, of term limits if they're needed, of distinct charter should be called out, the same type of things that we had in the planning and zoning ordinance.
Yeah, and you might have, something that if the board needs to adopt bylaws, and those bylaws have to be approved by council, you might include something in the starting ordinance about compensation. The topic points that would need to be considered when forming these commissions.
Yeah.
And I would hope that like what we could look at in crafting that is avoiding having the council have to reinvent the wheel every single time, while still giving us the flexibility to address that this committee may have a very different composition and need and goal and scope than that committee.
Councilmember Sullivan.
So I think what you described is, here are the kind of 10 items that you want to think about as you create this longer term. And then once we have a specific suggestion, we go through, those 10 items need to be addressed before we do the ordinance.
Yes, yeah. And then
That'd be
Yes.
fun.
this overarching ordinance can say, and then town council can create ad hoc committees to study single issues for, I don't know, for a short period of time.
Right.
To again, create some flexibility.
Councilmember Kerr.
So, thank you, you read my mind. If we're going to do this overarching guidance, then one of the key things you mentioned was bylaws. Another one was membership. So let's just jump into that. I saw some of these examples you gave us from other towns that were wildly different. I think Centennial said, for one of the example you gave us, that all shall be residents of the city at all times throughout the town. Then if we go to Silverthorne, shall be either a resident of Silverthorne or a registered elector in Colorado, which I don't even understand that, but this is of great interest to me because we either said or inferred that we wanted great participation from across the Keystone community. In fact, I questioned my memory, so I looked it up in the charter. It said that we would form citizen boards and commissions, quote, to ensure every member of the Keystone community's voice is considered in all decisions. Service to the town by all community members is encouraged by participation on various boards and by providing input to the town's elected officials. So I, for one, feel humbled every time this committee of 6 or 7 people make decisions for everyone else. So to get that feedback from a wide variety of stakeholders, assuming they're interested, which is not always going to be true, seems like an important thing for us to discuss.
Councilmember Thiston.
I acknowledge what you just said. I sat on the charter commission that put that in ink. And that's one of the reasons I think we need to have separate ordinances. I don't think that should be codified in our original ordinance stating who the membership should be. I think that should be case by case depending on the committee or board, and that's just my position. I don't think we should come up with a percentage in the original ordinance. It should be based on the need of the committee being formed, which would be a future ordinance.
So I respect that. Could you
Just a
give me a couple
second.
examples?
Councilmember Parmet.
I think I'd also add to that discussion, when you read the way that these boards are designed and function, there are voting roles, there are advisory roles. For example, Carol, if you and I wanted to join, say, the Open Space and Trails Commission, because we're passionate about it, we can't do it in a voting role, but we would be allowed to do it in an advisory role. And so there's lots of space to customize this to the needs and goals of a particular commission, the availability of particular demographics of suitable and excited people who want to participate, and then fit those into both voting and non-voting roles. And so I would concur with Valerie that we don't want to hamstring ourselves by setting one set of rules for all of the commissions.
Councilmember Kerr.
I think we're actually violently agreeing. I hesitate to put in anything specific now that for a commission we have yet to identify. But I also hesitate to say you must be a voter, a Keystone voter, because that was not what the charter suggested. And I don't think that's what anybody's saying that way. So, and I bring this up only because you had proposed that we address membership. So perhaps We don't do that.
Well, you can address membership, that it's a consideration once the board and commission is formed. That needs to be considered. Who is qualified to be a member on that particular board and commission,
Yeah, and
leaving open flexibility.
in the general ordinance would specify that for membership, membership of eligibility would be determined based on the requirements of that particular commission or committee.
Yes, and I would say that the ordinance should say that that's determined by town council.
Yes.
And one last point, the role of these boards and commissions is not to make decisions, it's to advise,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Do you have sufficient guidance?
I do, so what I am foreseeing for this is that it would come back for another work session in a draft format.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Next item is,
If I may.
go ahead.
Are there any committees you would like us, as this comes forward, to get the ball rolling on?
Trails and open space.
Yeah. Trails and open space. Another one I think that's, that I would like to see is a business advisory board or committee as well, to start getting the business community involved in this town as a unified, as a voice. Or two of them. I'm torn, given the comments of the town attorney, I like the idea of a citizens advisory committee, but again, when I think of as the town attorney pointed out, that tends to be a nebulous charter for that, so I would have to rethink that. Councilmember Davis?
That takes me back to we need a goal and a job for each
Yeah.
of these, and I'm really concerned about anything that's nebulous.
Councilmember Permit?
In that spirit, I'd like to recognize that there is like KCL and KOA, which essentially function that way and have a voice without us having to establish a separate committee that would be nebulous.
On the citizen side.
I would not call that a voice for everyone.
But along those same lines, our work sessions are open, our town council meetings are open, our emails are available. I think we've established that we're pretty open to advisement from the population, regardless of whether they're voters or not voters.
I think that's a great point, especially since we were elected to listen to the citizens. We don't need to be elected to appoint some other citizens to listen to the citizens.
Yeah.
Love it.
Any other comments? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I think I heard two potential to start
Open
with.
space and trails and business
Advisory.
advisory.
All right. Any others we should throw on that list?
John, you listed a whole, I mean, yours was much more comprehensive earlier in our conversation this evening when we were talking about our to-do list for this year. Did you have others on your list that we're omitting?
No, I just threw some thoughts that you had thrown out there, or members of the council had thrown out before. I did mention the citizen advisory group, but personally, I agree with our attorney here. One problem if you have those types of groups is they will either look at themselves as a shadow council or be severely disappointed when they're giving advice which you as a council has more information on and might not necessarily follow their advice. So I would discourage.
Councilmember Sullivan.
The question, because we brought it up earlier about highway safety in general. I mean, to me, it's of the long term, but there's also, we discussed earlier in earlier meetings, short term, quick hits, whatever you want to call it. And so I just throw it for the council's consideration. Is there anything that we should be doing now to promote that.
And perhaps that could be a short-term committee. That would be a resolution type versus long-term standing.
I would suggest that we have several priorities that we've already identified to attack this particular problem. And so if we were to assign citizens a goal of coming back to us with additional, do we have the bandwidth, the budget, and the capability to enact their suggestions at this time? If the answer is not, let's not waste their time and ours.
If I may weigh in on that too, as we develop plans, or hire consultants to develop plans for Highway 6, we will be having open houses and soliciting input on those plans, on things people don't want to see or things people do want to see in the plans.
Councilmember Davis.
After looking at the list of everything that the staff has prioritized for now and the end of the year, I don't want us to go crazy adding stuff, and this adds to the responsibilities of the staff. So I want to be very cognizant of, we got a lot to do, and we're really relying on a very small staff.
We appreciate it.
Councilmember Kerr.
I think that's important too. I meant to ask you, what is the staff's commitment to any one of these councils? And/or I've seen in some of these examples that the attorney gave us, there are council liaisons. And if I could take the example of the post office ad hoc committee, we have a representative who is working with them. Is that the norm? Is there, how much of this goes on staff and how much can we help with the burden?
It really depends on the type of committee being formed and what they're looking at. For example, open space and trails will take a lot of work from our community development department. Even just producing general agendas, general ideas for them to get started on. And I would strongly recommend that most of these committees have a council representative on the committee.
Councilmember Permit.
Do we need to have something to formalize the existing post office working group?
Right now, that is not a council function, that's a private function. It's not even ad hoc. It's not even ad hoc, that's a private function that's just sort of reported the status to us. So the question is, does the council want to take, and adopt, basically take over, because if we established a committee for that, or an ad hoc committee, since it's a one topic, that would mean the council would then be putting ourselves in the decision process of their actions. Councilmember Keystone.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what the disadvantage would be to having council engagement since it's such a significant community element. I feel like we're kind of walking this precarious line of pretending it's not a town function when the people participating in it are clearly associated with town decisions and functions. So I, for one, support transparency and rules. I like rules. So I would support making it an ad hoc committee. And I'm not trying to be difficult or create more work, but I think it's a technicality at this point.
Madam Attorney.
So I think one thing that would be helpful for you all to think about with these committees, these even ad hoc committees, long-term boards and commissions, is they're really helping you perform your policy-making function. And so I would discourage you from making any boards and commissions that are more administrative in nature, and really focus on, is this decision-making that this board is going to be studying, this issue, is this a policy issue, or is this an administrative function? And staff should really be performing your administrative functions, and council performs the policy and legislative making decisions.
Councilmember Permit?
I'm hearing great ideas coming out of that group. I would ask two questions. If it's going to be a situation where the product of that may involve request for funding, should not put it under an ad hoc committee. Wouldn't it give some officiality to that working group when they're negotiating and talking? And then also, if they are talking to other government agencies at the county or the federal level, isn't that something that we would want to fall under? And then I would ask Dan what he thinks about this.
Well,
Go ahead.
well, my thought is that, I pursued this originally as a citizen. And we have a fellow council member on it, and as a citizen as well. And so we are pursuing that and have had good success. I do believe that at some point this group may come back to this council and say, here's kind of the process. And we recommend that the council consider, for example, subsidization of some, postal, mailboxes or something like that. I think the success of that project, I don't think will be, it is dictated by us being an official. I could go either way, frankly. Maybe it is administrative, and maybe we're doing the administrative job right now. But I really don't have a view one way or the other.
And there would be nothing to preclude, once you have something formal you're submitting, for a town council then to take that and endorse that back to the Postal Service, endorse it up to our legislative representatives, Congressman Nagoose and the two senators, Bennett and Hickman. So we could endorse that at that point versus running and controlling, I guess would be the question, which is what Dan said.
May I weigh in?
Yes.
Just a quick question for Councilmember Sullivan. Would we cut through more red tape though if this were an official town ad hoc committee rather than a group of citizens who live up here?
Yeah, I think maybe when we get to the Washington federal level, maybe, right now, I think we have a good working relationship with Postal Master and his relationships with Denver. But once we do get and ask for our state, our federal elected officials to help, I will look for the moniker of the town of Keystone.
Again, I would ask, what is the con of making this an official ad hoc committee? And maybe that's something we're not wanting to put on the record, but I still don't understand. Given the fact that this is something we discussed during incorporation and proposed as one of our town projects, I'm missing something, and I don't know if somebody needs to kick me under the table and tell me outside, but I want to know what the con is to making this an official town ad hoc committee. It seems very appropriate.
Councilmember Sullivan?
And this isn't a con, but I think it's important to mention is that once it becomes official part of the town of Keystone, then your open meetings rules apply, your open records, keeping agendas, those types of things, noticing meetings, all of those rules apply. If it's not part of town of Keystone, then those rules don't apply. Yeah. But
I
you
understand.
can comply with those rules. I mean,
And I'm not sure you guys want to go through all the brain damage of providing notice and agendas, and I appreciate the transparency, and I clearly was missing the obvious.
I think a lot of us missed the obvious.
Me too. Every resident deserves a mailbox, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not involved with that working group, but that's what I believe.
Yeah. All right. Is there any other discussion? And again, going back to our attorney, Do you have sufficient guidance?
I do, yes, thank you.
All right. And I think the town manager has guidance for the two committees right now, and if we want to readdress the issue of the postal, we can at a later date. The next item is the request for proposals for an independent financial auditor, and I'll turn it over to our town manager.
And this shouldn't take very much time. I just wanted to, our accountants put together this RFP for us. Our mayor has already identified two changes that we should probably make before approving this in the evening meeting. The first is our 2024 budget was not filed with the state, so I'll remove that. And the other one was the proposal really should be submitted to me at the town, and then I'll bring the accountants in to go over the proposals. But does anyone have any questions about this or any other recommended changes?
Well, just the 1 month timeline, I guess, is that sufficient, do you think, for, I mean, do we know who we're going to be sending it to? We're saving response back in home.
We'll be putting it out on BidNet, and I'm sure there are, like an auditors organization or something that our accountant knows. We'll make sure all the auditors are aware of this. And municipal auditors are kind of a small group, so it's basically the same thing for any proposal they do. They'll just look at our size of our budget. I mean, if you're auditing Denver's budget, it's obviously significant. Well, they have auditors on staff. They have a whole department on staff. But they can put together an RFP or a response in that time frame, no problem.
Other questions or comments? All right, and now the topic that we've been waiting for, the discussion of the STR update. And shall I turn it directly over to our town clerk?
You sure can.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Town Council members. I tried to provide as comprehensive of an update as I could in the staff report to give everyone an idea of what's been going on with short-term rentals. I know that everyone is probably receiving a lot of questions about it, so I want to make sure that you folks have as much information as you can about what that looks like. So on a day-to-day basis, for the last couple months, we have been working with Blue Vector primarily to get that system up and running for the licensing administration process. We've also been working with Deckard Technology to implement kind of the bones of the system for identification and enforcement, but primarily right now our focus is on getting the STR applications live. So there were a couple small delays in working with Blue Vector, specifically with integrating the payment systems, because our payment systems are through the statewide Internet Portal Authority, so SIPA, and then it's a separate system from Blue Vector, so it just took a little bit more time than everyone anticipated getting all of those agreements put together. Everyone had to sign, well, not everyone, the Blue Vector people had to sign some NDAs before they could get that over, and I think that process just took a little bit longer. So that's where we're having a holdup right now with the development of the software, and that is a critical piece of the process. So we're hoping that will be all cleared up, but our expected go live date is August 30th. But we expect to send out an update to all of the STR owners by the end of this week. We just wanted to give the opportunity to talk through this with town council, and if there was any feedback or changes in the direction of the plan before that, to just give opportunity to have that feedback before that email goes out. But the anticipation is that we'll start that process on August 30th and have people submitting their renewal applications through September 30th. One thing we've been doing is working directly with all of the property management companies that have a large portion of the data to work on the data import that we got from Summit County and clean it up before we ever put it into the system. This should hopefully make it as clean as possible. I did some data cleanup before I sent it over to them and kind of tried to highlight things that were clearly inconsistencies and fix things that were formatting inconsistencies and call those out to them. But there will obviously be some things that they will only be able to identify. So hopefully they will be looking at those closely as well. But I think between those two processes, that should make the process of transitioning much more smooth. And we're hoping to have a very seamless transition. But we know that there will be struggles and hurdles as that goes live, just because systems can present difficulties for people. So we're planning to have some open office hours for folks to come in and ask us questions, and have some that are directed towards property management companies and some that are directed more towards owners, and having options to do that virtually as well. So that's kind of the main overview of where we're at. And we know that you will continue to get questions, and there will be people who have urgent concerns. So I wanted to make sure you knew what all the resources were, and when that email goes out at the end of the week, you will get a copy of it as well. So I encourage you to direct things to us to be able to resolve those issues. But so far, I think that the property management companies that I've been working with feel more confident in the system just because we're starting with that cleaner data, and I hope that that will make the process a lot more smooth for everyone.
Councilmember Sullivan.
I read where, I think somewhere you said that you had over 400 calls, people calling in. Is it a few items, or is it just, they just want to know what's going on?
They are primarily just wanting to know what's going on. We did, there was an email that went out in the middle of July that gave out our direct line and email addresses. And it instructed every short-term rental owner to directly call or email us. So that was probably the main reason for all of those calls. And most people were very happy to say, oh, okay, I'm ahead of the curve. I think when they got that email, they were initially concerned that maybe they were behind on something or missing something about what they needed to do. And of course, there were a couple people who were really happy to get it done, and we just told them they have to wait a little bit. But other than that, most people were responsive to that.
I want to point out that, I'd like to point out that email that went out from the county went out without coordination with our clerk, so she suddenly got telephone calls. Councilmember Parmet.
Thank you for your work on this, and I'm sorry you had to deal with that deluge.
All right. Councilmember Kerr.
Yes, thank you for your work. And it's your work that's going to make or break this transition. So thank you for that. But we also know that there are a lot of people who have some hopes and concerns about enforcing some of this stuff. And so I know we don't have a decision yet, but I wonder if staff could address what you're thinking about with respect to code enforcement. If the responsible agent, for example, gets the call and nothing happens and it comes back to the town clerk and yourself, what are our next steps? Or what are you thinking about for those next steps, which we don't need till October, granted?
It really depends on the issue, and it depends on how we go with our law enforcement contract. In discussions with Dylan, we're talking about having a community service officer as part of the police department. Our code enforcement officer is our community service officer. Some of the complaints, they need to go to the police that night. They're not necessarily so much a code violation as they are a noise ordinance violation, things like that. If we get calls that are not immediate response, but there's a problem with this. Their renters are always parking in the front yard or in my parking space, things like that. That would be code enforcement, and depending on whether we have an in-house code enforcement officer or a police officer, it would just be passed right on to them to contact the responsible party. It might be the owner, it might be people who are staying there at this time. And as I said, it's really complaint dependent, but we will have code enforcement one way or the other at the start of the year. So.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Before we leave the topic, I would just like to echo, I think, what Councilmember Permet, and I think it's really the sense of the council, is that staff is doing a phenomenal job on this. We're actually plowing new ground in Summit County and probably even in the state in our approach to licensing, going with a new provider who has never done this service before but has tremendous potential. That creates additional challenges, and I'd just like to applaud the entire staff for the work that they have done so far in getting us as far as we are. This getting through, while we have a lot of concerns about public safety in the near term, this is probably on my list the highest near-term project and most important near-term project that we have to get this through because of the number of community members that this impacts. And if it goes wrong, we have a major black eye. So again, thank you very much to the town clerk and the staff who's making it, and the town manager making this happen.
And if before we end this conversation, can we get your feedback on the Good Neighbor guidelines?
All right. Councilmember Kerr.
So when we first talked about this, Councilwoman Keel had some concerns about visitors to Summit County who do not understand necessarily the effect of altitude when you're partying and having a great time here at altitude and don't know what mitigation that they can take. So I reached out to the Public Health Office of Summit County. They provided that document that I'm moving around. If you want to think about including that, I mean, you've proposed, and I like that, something about single stream recycling. You've proposed information about wildlife, which reinforces the idea of keeping trash away. And this is just educational and helpful. So I propose we think about doing this, and I ask Aaron to take a hard look and see if this is this the information we want to share? You don't have to tell me right now.
The information looks good. If you want to refine some more succinct,
Yes.
I can definitely do that.
Let me send you the digits.
Okay, awesome. I don't know, like the trash handling says something like, you feed the bears, we'll feed you to the bears.
It's not, that's not.
Any comments? Councilmember Clifton.
I think it's important, I really appreciate the supplemental information that we are considering providing in addition to the Good Neighbor guidelines, and I think this would be a good addition. But I do think we need to try to keep the initial notice high level so people can actually read it and get through it. Another point that I'm not sure how we address this, but we need to distinguish and or defer to HOA policies in every Good Neighbor suggestion that we make, because there may be town policies, but people also need to realize that most of these rentals fall within HOAs that have their own policies and procedures, and I think it's important to at least have that mentioned within the Good Neighbor guidelines.
Councilmember Davis.
I noticed it in there and thought it's very good. It's near the end, and maybe the suggestion would be to move it forward. But I congratulate you for putting it in there because I was looking for it.
Oh, it is, it's like the last
Yeah,
sentence.
that's it.
Okay, apparently I didn't have very much follow through, then I think that should be at the top.
Yeah, let's think about that.
Yeah, and maybe a way to address some of that is like you've done on the second page, you talk about maximum capacity, and it says this short-term rental unit has a maximum net capacity of blank overnight guest. And the item above under parking, traffic safety, we could have a sentence in there that says this short-term rental unit can utilize a maximum of X number of parking spaces. And that, again, that would be a fill in the blank by the rental management company, but that would be, again, tailored to the HOA specifics.
But in addition, I think given, I mean, those were the two that stood out to me. I think it might also be important within those two specific ones to note that there might be varying HOA policies.
I just think that like, if you want people to read this,
Sure.
you should get everything you want in bullet points on the front page, and then if they want to know more, keep reading.
Yes.
Yeah.
The supplements.
In like 18-point font on those bullet points too.
You would like to be able to have the good neighbor policies actually posted in the unit, and that would be limited to one page. And then the rest of it is supplemental information that would be included that goes to the renter coming in. But I guess that's probably would be what my recommendation would be.
Do we want something in the supplement about safe practices while hiking, recreating, preventative search and rescue to prevent people from needing search and rescue?
Is there something you could provide them that
Yes.
they could include it as a supplemental? I'm trying to minimize staff rewrite time.
Yep, I have that.
All right.
Maybe even considering including relevant safety numbers. I mean, like he just said, search and rescue number. I don't know if there are other really important numbers that we would want to include for people. I know a lot of rental companies provide some of that, but a lot of them are mom pops that don't. And so having important relevant numbers might also be a good addition.
And I assume in search and rescue, that would be the 911 county sheriff.
Correct.
But other numbers.
We could include like the dispatch non-emergent number.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, that would be in the supplemental information versus a one pager up front. I mean, if it's more than a page, it ain't going to be read. In fact, it's questionable whether even a one pager would be read.
They're on vacation.
I mean, what you would hope is that this information would be forwarded to the renter before they arrive as part of the acceptance of the reservation. And I know some rental management companies do that, and they would give the folks an opportunity to read. I mean, I remember a discussion last week with a renter who was confused about parking. And they said that, gee, when we got here, we found we could only have one parking spot, and we have a 3-bedroom, and that's ludicrous. And the answer is, well, that's all that's allocated in your particular HOA. And yes, that information should have been provided to you in advance. And their answer was, yeah, well, it was, but I just didn't read it. Councilmember Davis.
I think I believe it's a requirement on their advertisement that they handle how many parking spaces, that they include how many parking spaces are available. And, you know, it's not our fault if people don't read.
Yeah. Would you like some assistance to try to make this to be one page? I'm thinking of all the other tasks that you have right now.
I would not say no.
Aaron and I can do some recommendations.
Great.
And tell you that.
Great. I'm
I
just
would look
looking.
forward to working with you on that.
Good. So not only do we give you problems, we give you potential solutions. Hopefully. Any other questions on the, or comments on the good neighbor policy? All right. Now we go into a discussion of manager council issues. My recommendation is that this is the same topic that will be on the council agenda this evening, is that we not discussing the issues at this time, defer all of them to the main council agenda, and that we go into adjournment for 1 hour and 5 minutes to 7 o'clock and enjoy dinner. Is that acceptable to the council? Councilman Kerr?
I move that we adjourn for dinner.
Moved.
Are there any, apart from that last agenda item, is there anything that we could like shift into this time period so we're out earlier tonight?
I'm just going to have agenda.
Well, we were trying to get done by 6. Are you saying you'd like us to go later than 6?
I was just saying we could take a break, eat, then finish stuff up with the idea that we get out of here closer to 8 than 9.
But we formally started at 7. I'm concerned that moving a lot of council issues into the work session when we have it on a formal council agenda.
Non-agenda items, just report outs. We can do it then too.
What do you guys think? Well, we have a motion on the table to adjourn. Is there a second to the motion? No, I mean to not adjourn, to recess. Well, yeah, to adjourn. Is there a second to the motion? Councilmember Davis?
Second.
Any discussion? Councilmember Sullivan?
Was there an item you wanted to add, I mean, that you were going to add to the discussion and read out the report?
I mean, normally we discuss like meetings we've gone to, that sort of thing. I don't know, it was just things to move. You can ignore my request. Normally when it's sunny outside right now, we're out at 6, I'll be like, cool, I'm gonna go get on my mountain bike and ride the incline. I didn't bring my bike today. Okay.
All right. In that case, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of adjourning? All those opposed? Motion carried by a vote of 6-0. We are adjourned until the council starts at 7.